There are moments in life when truth does not arrive as a surprise, it arrives as recognition. You feel it long before you hear it. Your body senses it. Your silence understands it. Your intuition has already written the ending before the words are spoken aloud. You have been questioning yourself, replaying conversations, studying small shifts in tone, noticing pauses that felt heavier than they should. You told yourself you might be overthinking. You tried to be rational. You tried to be fair. But deep inside, something steady and quiet kept whispering, pay attention. Intuition is not panic. It is not fear. It is accumulated perception. It is your unconscious mind assembling patterns faster than logic can explain them. When something is misaligned, your inner compass trembles, not loudly, but persistently. And now a confession approaches, not to shock you, but to validate you, not to break you, but to return you to self-trust. When truth steps forward, your first reaction may not be anger. It may be relief. Relief that you are not imagining things. Relief that your inner voice was not a disturbance, but a guide. The pain of confirmation is often lighter than the torture of doubt. Do not celebrate being right. Honor being aware. Awareness is power when it leads to clarity instead of bitterness. This moment is not about catching someone else in truth. It is about catching yourself in wisdom. Listen carefully when the confession comes. Not just to the words, but to your internal response. Are you surprised or are you calm? If you are calm, it is because your deeper mind has already processed what your ears are only now hearing. This is your invitation to trust your perception more deeply, to stop abandoning your inner signals in order to keep external peace. To understand that intuition is not accusation, it is alignment with reality. Let the truth do its work. Let it clear the fog. Let it return you to yourself. Because the greatest confirmation is not that someone speaks, it is that you already knew. Intuition often recognizes truth before facts are spoken aloud, because the human mind is constantly observing, recording, and interpreting subtle signals beneath conscious awareness. Long before logic forms a sentence, perception forms a feeling. Small inconsistencies in behavior, tone, timing, and emotional energy register internally even when they are too faint to explain out loud. A delayed reply, a forced smile, a shift in posture, a contradiction between words and expression, these details accumulate quietly. The conscious mind may dismiss them one by one, but the deeper mind assembles them into a pattern. What we call intuition is often this pattern recognition rising to the surface as a quiet certainty that something is aligned or misaligned. It does not argue, it nudges, it does not present evidence, it presents resonance or discomfort. People often mistake intuition for suspicion or fear, but true intuition feels different. It is steady rather than frantic. It does not spiral into endless scenarios, it points in a direction. Fear shouts, intuition repeats. Fear demands immediate reaction. Intuition asks for attentive presence. Because it operates below verbal thought, it often appears before explanation, which is why many people doubt it. They look for proof first and permission second, when in reality intuition is an early signal system designed to protect psychological and emotional balance. It draws from memory, experience, micro-expressions, and emotional history, thousands of data points processed faster than conscious reasoning can manage. Social conditioning teaches people to override these signals. They are told to be polite, to give the benefit of the doubt, to avoid assuming, to stay agreeable. While these values have their place, they can also train someone to silence their internal alarms. Over time, a person may begin to distrust their own perception more than the surface presentation of others. This creates internal conflict. The body senses tension while the mind invents excuses. The longer this split continues, the more anxious and uncertain a person feels, not because intuition is unreliable, but because it is being ignored. When the truth is finally spoken aloud, it often feels strangely familiar. The reaction is not shock, but recognition. There is a sense of, I knew this, even if one cannot identify when the knowing began. That moment reveals that intuition had already mapped the territory. Spoken facts simply place visible markers on what was internally understood. This recognition restores self-trust. It shows the perception was functioning accurately even without formal proof. Developing sensitivity to intuition requires stillness and honesty, Noise, distraction, and emotional dependency can drown it out. When someone slows down enough to notice their internal responses, tension, ease, hesitation, clarity, they begin to separate intuitive signals from reactive emotion. Intuition becomes clear and one is willing to see reality rather than preferred outcomes. It strengthens when a person stops negotiating with discomfort and starts listening to it. Over time, this inner guidance becomes less mysterious and more dependable, not as a supernatural voice, but as refined awareness speaking in a quiet, consistent language beneath words. Inner signals come from pattern recognition, not paranoia, because the human mind is designed to continuously detect regularities and disruptions in the environment, especially in relationships and social behavior. Every interaction leaves an imprint. How someone normally speaks, responds, reacts under pressure, expresses warmth, avoids topics, or maintains consistency. Over time, the brain builds an internal model of these patterns. When a deviation appears, a mismatch between words and behavior, a repeated inconsistency, a subtle emotional withdrawal, something inside registers the shift before conscious reasoning catches up. This internal alert is often mislabeled as overthinking, yet it is frequently the result of accumulated observation operating below the surface of deliberate thought. Paranoia imagines threats without grounding. Pattern recognition detects change based on repeated exposure. The difference lies in structure. Paranoia leaps to conclusions without stable reference points, while intuitive pattern awareness compares present signals to establish baselines. For example, when a person who is normally open becomes guarded in specific contexts, or when reassurance increases while transparency decreases, the mind notes the discrepancy. No single instance proves anything, but repetition builds weight. The inner signal is not created by fear alone. It is triggered by contrast between what has been consistent and what is now different. This process is largely unconscious because the brain is optimizing efficiency. If every micro change required full analytical processing, decision-making would become paralyzed. Instead, the subconscious filters enormous amounts of behavioral data and sends a simple message upward: something fits or something does. That message is often felt physically as tension, hesitation, or unease, rather than verbally explained. Because it arrives as a feeling instead of a logical argument, people sometimes distrust it. They demand courtroom-level proof from a system designed to give early warnings, not final verdicts. Emotional history also contributes to pattern recognition. Past experiences train perception. When someone has previously encountered dishonesty, manipulation, or emotional inconsistency, the mind becomes more efficient at detecting similar relational rhythms. This is not inherently cynicism, it is adaptive learning. Just as a musician hears when a note is off key, a socially attentive mind senses when emotional tone is off pattern. The key difference between healthy recognition and paranoia is flexibility. Pattern recognition remains open to new evidence and revision. Paranoia resists contradiction and feeds on assumption. Stress and insecurity can distort inner signals, which is why self-awareness matters. When someone is emotionally overloaded, the mind may interpret neutral variation as threat. But when a person is grounded and observant, inner alerts tend to be specific rather than global. They point to particular behaviors, moments, or contradictions instead of producing generalized distrust. The signal says this detail does T-match. Not everything is dangerous. Learning to pause and review actual repeated behaviors helps distinguish intuitive recognition from anxious projection. Trusting inner signals responsibly means neither obeying them blindly nor dismissing them automatically. It means examining the pattern they refer to. What has changed? How often? In what situations? With what emotional tone? When these questions produce consistent observations, the signal gains credibility. In this way, inner awareness functions like an internal analyst, quietly comparing past and present, stability and deviation, harmony and discord, and sending a felt message when the pattern shifts enough to deserve attention. Doubt is often more painful than confirmed truth because uncertainty stretches emotional tension across time, while truth, even when difficult, creates a boundary. The mind can endure pain more steadily than it can endure ambiguity. When facts are unknown, imagination fills the empty space, and imagination rarely chooses the mildest possibility. It generates scenarios, replays moments, questions motives, and constructs alternate meanings behind every small detail. This constant mental simulation exhausts emotional energy. A confirmed truth may hurt sharply, but doubt hurts continuously. When a person lives in doubt, their attention becomes divided. One part of the mind tries to function normally, while another part keeps scanning for hidden meanings and missing information. This split drains focus and peace. Sleep becomes lighter, reactions become quicker, patience becomes thinner. The nervous system prefers a hard reality over an undefined threat, because reality can be processed, but uncertainty must be monitored. Monitoring never ends. It only pauses from fatigue. Doubt also erodes self-trust. A person begins to question not only the situation, but their own perception. Am I imagining this? Am I being unfair? Am I missing something obvious? This internal cross-examination creates a loop where no answer feels stable. Confirmed truth, even if unwelcome, restores internal alignment. It allows perception and reality to meet. The mind no longer has to argue with itself about what is real. In prolonged doubt, people often negotiate against their own intuition to maintain emotional comfort. They create explanations to postpone confrontation with what might be true. These explanations act like temporary painkillers but deepen long-term distress. Each new inconsistency then reopens the question, forcing the emotional wound to be re-examined. When truth is finally revealed, there is often grief but also relief, because the cycle of questioning stops. The mind no longer needs to chase clarity, it can begin to respond to it. Uncertainty magnifies emotional attachment as well. When outcomes are unclear, hope and fear grow simultaneously. Hope says everything may be fine, fear says everything may be broken. This emotional tug-of-war intensifies investment and vulnerability. Confirmed truth collapses the duality into one direction. Even loss becomes more bearable than suspense, because loss can be grieved, while suspense must be endured. There is also a biological dimension. The stress response is activated more strongly by unpredictability than by known difficulty. Studies of stress patterns show that variable threat produces more anxiety than consistent challenge. The body prepares again and again without resolution. Muscles stay tense, thoughts stay alert, emotions stay guarded. Truth allows the system to downshift from vigilance to processing. People sometimes say they fear the truth, but often what they truly fear is the period before truth, the waiting, the guessing, the silent interpretation of fragments. Once truth arrives, choices become possible. Boundaries can be drawn, conversations can be held, decisions can be made. Movement replaces suspension. Even painful clarity is a form of progress because it gives direction to emotional energy instead of trapping it in circles of speculation. A confession brings validation, not just revelation, because it does more than expose facts. It acknowledges the perception and awareness of the person receiving it. When someone confesses, they are admitting something that has often been sensed or intuited long before words were spoken. The act of confession bridges the gap between inner knowing and external reality, confirming that the impressions, suspicions, or feelings that have been quietly observed are accurate. This confirmation carries a weight beyond the surface of the information itself. It reassures the mind and calms the emotional turbulence that arises from uncertainty. Validation comes from recognition that the inner voice, the intuition, and the perception were not mistaken, were not imagined, and were not trivial. Intuition often senses what the eyes do not see and what the ears do not yet hear. It is an accumulation of subtle observations, behavioral patterns, emotional undercurrents, and micro-expressions that the conscious mind may overlook. These signals are rarely definitive, which is why the person experiencing them often questions themselves. Was I too sensitive? Am I overthinking? Did I misread the tone, the gesture, or the pause? Until confirmation arrives, doubt persists, and doubt is heavy, draining mental and emotional energy. A confession removes that weight. It does not just provide information about the other person, it validates the self, the judgment, the discernment, and the sensitivity that detected truth long before articulation. The process of receiving a confession also allows for emotional recalibration. People often feel relief rather than shock because their inner compass was already aligned with reality. The confession is not shocking, it resonates. This resonance affirms that perception and intuition were trustworthy. The act of being validated can also heal internal friction, replacing self-questioning with acceptance. The listener is reminded that their capacity to notice, interpret, and understand subtle dynamics is not flawed. The internal map they have been following, even in uncertainty, is reliable. A confession, therefore, serves as a mirror reflecting the accuracy of one. as internal awareness. Validation through confession can also foster empowerment. It shifts energy from passive speculation into conscious acknowledgement. The receiver is no longer trapped in a liminal state of guessing and questioning. They can act from a place of clarity, respond with wisdom, and make informed decisions. Validation does not mean absence of pain. Often the truth confirms difficult realities. Yet, the pain of truth is tempered by the understanding that the internal perception was correct. There is integrity in alignment between inner knowing and outer fact. Furthermore, confession humanizes the other person while simultaneously honoring the observer. It demonstrates accountability and transparency. The listener gains insight not only into the act confessed, but also into the honesty of the confessor. This dual recognition strengthens relational clarity. The observer's perception is confirmed, and the confessor's responsibility is acknowledged. The validation inherent in a confession reinforces trust in the mind, as capacity to perceive accurately, to judge fairly, and to remain attuned to truth even in the absence of verbal confirmation. In this way, confession is not merely revelation, it is a profound affirmation of awareness itself. Self-trust is more important than being proven right because it forms the foundation for emotional stability, clarity of judgment, and consistent decision-making. When a person relies solely on external validation, the mind becomes dependent on confirmation from others, leaving it vulnerable to doubt, manipulation, or misinterpretation. Being proven right may feel gratifying in the moment, but the satisfaction is fleeting and often tied to ego rather than understanding. In contrast, self-trust provides enduring confidence that allows a person to navigate uncertainty, make choices aligned with their values, and remain grounded even when outcomes are unpredictable or others disagree. Self-trust arises from attentiveness to one's own perceptions, intuition, and experience. It acknowledges that internal signals, feelings of hesitation, curiosity, discomfort, or resonance are valid and meaningful guides. When a person cultivates this trust, they do not need every fact or confirmation to feel justified. They operate with an inner compass that can assess situations, anticipate consequences, and weigh options. This reduces the paralysis of indecision and mitigates the anxiety that arises when outcomes are ambiguous. People who depend on external validation, by contrast, often oscillate between self-doubt and defensiveness, their sense of truth tethered to the responses of others rather than the solidity of their own insight. Being proven right is reactive, whereas self-trust is proactive. To be proven right requires that external circumstances align with personal perception, which is often outside one's control. Self-trust, however, exists independently of outcomes, provides resilience in the face of error or misinterpretation because it is based on the process of careful observation, reflection, and discernment rather than the end result. A person who trusts themselves can acknowledge mistakes without undermining confidence, learn from experiences, and refine their understanding. In this way, self-trust cultivates growth and adaptability, while reliance on being proven right can foster defensiveness, resentment, or a fragile sense of authority that collapses under contradiction. Moreover, self-trust allows a person to navigate relationships with clarity and integrity. When interactions are filtered through the need to be right, communication becomes argumentative or defensive. When self-trust guides perception, a person can listen deeply, respond thoughtfully, and maintain composure even when confronted with differing opinions or challenging revelations. The focus shifts from external validation to internal alignment, creating steadiness in judgment, emotional regulation, and relational engagement. People with strong self-trust are less swayed by manipulation or deception because their sense of reality is anchored internally. Ultimately, self-trust nurtures independence of thought and emotional autonomy. It empowers a person to act decisively, accept outcomes without bitterness, and remain aligned with personal principles even when others disagree or misunderstand. Being proven right may confirm accuracy momentarily, but it does not strengthen the inner foundation in the same way. Self-trust transforms perception into confidence, intuition into guidance, and awareness into wisdom. It ensures that the mind and heart can navigate uncertainty with resilience, calm, and integrity, while reliance on external validation leaves both vulnerable to the whims and judgments of others. True empowerment, therefore, comes not from the fleeting satisfaction of being proven right, but from the enduring certainty of trusting oneself. Awareness should lead to clarity and growth, not resentment, because the purpose of understanding and perceiving reality is not to create bitterness, but to guide conscious action and personal evolution. When a person becomes aware of patterns, truths, or hidden motives, that knowledge can serve as a compass, pointing the way toward decisions, boundaries, and emotional alignment. Awareness illuminates situations and relationships that may have been murky or confusing, offering the opportunity to see clearly rather than through the fog of assumptions, fear, or denial. When insight is applied constructively, it nurtures growth, strengthens self-trust, and fosters resilience, allowing a person to respond rather than react. Resentment, on the other hand, is a misapplication of awareness. It clings to observation without translating it into learning or constructive adjustment, anchoring the mind in past harm instead of current understanding. Clarity emerges when awareness is paired with reflection. Observing the dynamics of a situation or the behaviors of others is only the first step. Reflecting on these observations, identifying patterns, and understanding causes allows the mind to transform perception into actionable insight. Clarity empowers choice. It enables a person to recognize what aligns with their values, what boundaries need reinforcement, and what behaviors or influences should be released. This kind of awareness is forward-looking. It creates the conditions for growth because it provides a map of reality showing both obstacles and opportunities. Growth, in this context, is not only external change but internal evolution, developing patience, discernment, resilience, and the capacity to navigate complexity without losing composure or self-respect. Resentment, by contrast, traps awareness in the past. It focuses on what was done or not done, what was perceived as unfair, and who was responsible. While this may feel justified in the moment, it creates emotional stagnation. The mind remains tied to grievance, replaying events, and reinforcing negativity rather than using insight to guide adaptive action. Resentment often magnifies perceived slights and projects them onto the present, preventing true understanding and limiting the potential for growth. Turns awareness into a weapon against oneself or others, rather than a tool for alignment and clarity. Developing the capacity to use awareness constructively requires discipline and emotional maturity. It requires observing without judgment, initially acknowledging discomfort or disappointment, and then asking, what does this reveal about reality, about myself, about what I can do next? This approach prevents insight from becoming toxic. Awareness becomes a form of empowerment when it is integrated into decision-making, boundary setting, and personal evolution. It nurtures responsibility for one, as experience without blaming others unnecessarily, allowing emotional energy to shift from conflict to understanding, from reaction to intentional action. Ultimately, awareness functions best as a lens that brings the unseen into focus, highlighting patterns, inconsistencies, and truths that can inform action. When it leads to clarity, it strengthens discernment and reinforces self-trust. When it is paired with growth, it transforms challenge into learning, confusion into strategy, and discomfort into wisdom. Resentment emerges only when awareness is misused, when perception becomes fixation instead of guidance. In this way, the power of being truly aware lies not in cataloging wrongs or preserving judgment, but in shaping a mind capable of understanding, responding, and evolving with integrity and intention. Awareness becomes a vehicle for liberation, clarity, and growth rather than a source of stagnation, bitterness, or emotional entrapment. So, when the truth is revealed, when confessions are made, or when your intuition is finally confirmed, remember this. The value is not in being proven right, not in catching someone else in error, and not in holding on to resentment. The true victory lies in trusting yourself, honoring your awareness, and using each insight as a stepping stone toward clarity, growth, and inner freedom. Let each moment of recognition remind you that your mind and heart are capable of perceiving reality with precision, your feelings are valid, and your wisdom is yours to cultivate. Step forward with calm, with courage, and with the certainty that every truth you encounter, even the difficult ones, is an invitation to align more deeply with yourself and live with intention, integrity, and clarity.